After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.
Oh, hey, everybody. Episode 93 of The Hunting Collective. I'm super excited about this one, Phil. This is the first of our best ofs. And I feel like these best ofs are as cool as anything we do. It's like visiting an old friend. An old friend come over for Christmas that you haven't seen in a while. Mm-hmm. And you get to enjoy and think about what they mean to you. And so that's what this is for me. So somehow, in a weird way, that lines up for our holiday. But before we get to all of that, Phil, what do you think about this best of situation? You digging it?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
It's a great idea?
Yeah.
Should we do more of them?
I'd say like maybe every few years.
Oh, every few years, yeah. Really sprinkle them in like sparsely.
Well, I mean, you can only, what, are we going to do another one in 6 months where you...
like the best of the last 6 months.
You had like a few more episodes. You're like, now we're going to do the best of those episodes.
The best of the last week.
Yeah, exactly.
Then, yeah, that's a little bit self-aggrandizing, I think.
No.
All right, Phil. Well, let's get into it. Episode 93. Enjoy.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. When I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels. Oh, number 7.
Hey, everybody. Merry Christmas, Philip.
Ho, ho, ho.
I didn't feel it. Try that again.
Ho, ho.
That's what's terrible. If you want a better version of Santa Claus, travel over to the Meat Eater podcast that launched yesterday. What were we called? The Christmas Spectacular?
I don't think, as of this recording, I don't think it has an official name yet.
We'll call it that.
But Steve calls it the Some Bitchin' Christmas Special.
Meat Eater Some Bitchin' Christmas Special.
Yeah.
Including, let me call something out. I'm very sad that every episode of THC has an email notification from my laptop. I'm sorry. If you've been listening, every episode has like a blip.
Oh, I think it's a trademark of the show.
It's really part of the show.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so I actually muted that just now. The Christmas Some Bitchin' Christmas Spectacular from Meat Eater is over there at the Meat Eater podcast. So go download that. You'll get a little taste of one Ben O'Brien as Santa Claus. So I read a poem, talked some stuff to the crew. Was happy to take part. So go listen to the Meat Eater Christmas Some Bitchin' Spectacular light show. It was great. Phil, it's really, if you really want to know who the mind behind it is, it's Phil.
I'd say it's mostly Corinne and then me.
And then you. Okay.
Yes.
Corinne, the producer.
Yeah. But thanks.
Producer Corinne. Shout out to you. All right. Well, this is a different kind of show than we've done in the past. We've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, but episode 93 is volume 1 of the best of THC. I got to tell you, I spent a whole day working on this stuff, going back, pinching time codes for old Phil here, listening to old podcasts, man. And it brought a tear to my eye a couple of times. Memories of conversations past. Ghosts of conversations past.
Topical.
Yes, because it's Christmas. And so I think that we'll get right to it. But before we do that, we're winding down, as we said last week, we're winding down on our not so sharp moments. We're winding down. It's coming to the end. We only have a couple more left.
Time for reflection.
Yeah, it's a time to think about all the dumb shit that you've done over the last year. Really, your entire life. So Phil and I will pause for a moment and let you reflect on the years past. Phil will put in some sort of sound effect here. All right, we're back.
I hope you felt your shame.
Yeah, and so you have been a terrible human 2019.
Yeah. Wow.
Here at the THC, you should acknowledge that and move forward as a better human. There's a lot of self-help podcasts out there. This isn't one of them. This is a self-shaming podcast. And I know what you're thinking. I'm terrible, and then you're probably right. And so in the new year, get it together.
All right. That was inspirational.
Yeah, I should have been a motivational speaker, shouldn't I?
Yeah, it's not too late.
It's not too late. I'm going to do it. All right. Play the jingle, Phil.
Work sharp, not so sharp moments, sharp so you don't have to be.
I'm going to miss that jingle when it goes away. It might come back.
It'll live on in all of our hearts.
In our hearts and minds. And so, in the deepest, darkest depths of our synapses. All right. This is from... I have a child's mind, and this made me laugh just reading the subject line. In the subject line, this is from Justin Snavely. The subject line was, not so shart moment.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Not so shart moment.
Shart moment.
Shart.
Got it. Okay.
Do we need to define what a shart is?
I don't believe so.
I think we're going to figure it out here soon. All right, Justin says, I write this to you with a humble heart. It is tough to relive this not so sharp moment. This past bow season in Colorado, I decided to take on my very first elk hunt. I trudged around the wilderness the day before opener, and during opening day, looking for elk sign in an area I had never been. On the night of the opener, I sat by my fire and listened to a few bulls crack off right before I hit the hay. I woke up in the morning bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and during my morning coffee, I heard a couple of cows off in the meadow below me. I cracked off a bugle, and lo and behold, I had a bull return the call about a quarter mile from camp. I figured, why heck, let's go get him. I made my way up the ridge and called until I was roughly 100 yards away from the bull, but he held fast and would not come an inch closer. I figured I'd let him calm down and mosey on about while I regrouped at my camp. I thought I would chase him after I got my pack all put back together. Well, as you may know, coffee is quite the laxative. It's quite the turn. It was a hunting story, and then just went right to...
And as you know.
As you well know. I don't know that. I don't drink coffee, but I can assume.
Oh, yeah.
Would you agree with coffee is quite the laxative, Philip?
Yes, it can be.
Can be, okay. Especially after a quick little jaunt up a ridge and back. I clasped my chest buckle and thought, today is going to be the day I shoot my first elk. As I began to let loose what I thought to be a frog stomper, it quickly turned into molten hot sludge traveling down my leg.
Okay, I'll pause there for a sec. I've heard the term shart. I'm sure most people have.
Yeah.
Frog stomper is new to me.
Is that new to you?
Yes.
I believe it means that when you stepped on a frog, and that's the noise it would make.
Ah, okay.
I could be wrong, but that's my
that
guess.
makes sense.
Does it make sense?
Yep.
All right, we'll go with it. I was quick and deliberate to take my pants and underwear, as they had seen their version of a pass-through. The dirty pants were saved, however. My last wet wipes used up, and my pride quickly humbled as I said a final goodbye to my underwear and the elk woods for that day, as I set my undergarments ablaze, along with my hopes and dreams. You can see this man just like sadly burning his underwear. Uh-huh. We could do that Hulk music that we do for Mean Common. As I hiked through the woods with my backup pair of white leggings, I took my walk of shame back to the truck for clean pants. I hope you enjoyed my not-so-shart moment. Justin. Play the jingle, Phil.
Work sharp, not so sharp moments. Sharp so you don't have to be.
Oh, boy. Well, Justin.
This is the most somber, not so sharp moment yet.
Yeah. Justin, this is sad, man.
Yeah, it's pitiful.
Yeah, this is really, I mean, you're by yourself in the woods burning your shitty underwear. It is, it's a low point for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, listen, we're about bringing people back from the depths. You know what I told you earlier? You're terrible.
Feel shame, but then come back.
Yeah.
Like a phoenix rising from the
I
diarrhea.
told you earlier you're all terrible, but now I'm going to tell you you can come back, just like Justin's underwear, from the depths of the ash.
Yeah.
Rises a free work sharp field sharpener from the folks here at THC. And so thank you, Work Sharp, and thank you, Justin, for putting it out there for everyone. All your shame and your just all the poop running down your leg early in the morning. And I will say that as a non-coffee drinker, let's not blame this on coffee. Or should we?
It was probably a factor, but
There's no way to know. There's no way to know.
Okay, it's all Justin then.
Yeah, so there's no way to know. So listen, I don't know if I want not so sharp moment to be a thing or not.
I think one and done
might be good.
Yeah.
I'm a little scared of what this could turn into.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend my days reading your short stories.
No,
So don't you dare send me a short story.
no more.
Don't you dare send that to me. Please. All right. This is, like I said, a different type of show, Phil. This show is the best of. I went through all 90-some episodes of this podcast. I listened to every single one of them, Phil. 90 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Are you amazed?
I'm 90. There's more. Each show is more
that's
than
true.
an hour.
So it was more like 180 hours.
I'd say on average, yeah.
Yeah, I spent
Yeah.
at my house alone in my underwear that were clean.
And not on fire.
Not that were not aflame. Listening to every conversation I've had. I also feel shame.
Yeah, that's pretty egotistical of you.
Yeah. No, it was a pretty sad little weekend. But I also felt heartened by some of the better people we've had on this podcast. And a lot of them, you know how early if you've listened to every episode of this podcast, first, let me say thank you, because that's quite the feat. When it started, I only really had to draw from, I wasn't part of Meat Eater, and I only really had to draw from the people that I knew, right? The people that I knew in my life that I thought had a good story to tell. And so that's really how this podcast started. It's kind of changed over the years. And what I'll call the pre-Phil days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pre-Phil. There was a bunch of people that I would call friends, people that have impacted my life, whose stories impacted me, and I wanted to share their stories with you. And so that was really the impetus for this podcast in the beginning, and it still is to a large extent. But at some point, if you're trying to do a weekly show, you can't just interview people you know every week. And so in the pre-Phil days,
So much like we designate the years,
Yeah.
AD,
yeah,
BC, you're equating me joining the podcast to Jesus
2018 PP.
coming to Earth.
Yeah, 2018 PP.
PP, BP, and PP.
Yeah, pre-Phil. But maybe
Wait, okay, yeah. I was thinking post-Phil and before Phil.
that's a better way to do it.
BP and PP.
PP, yeah.
Okay.
This is 2018 BP.
PP, BP.
2019, 2020 would be 2020 PP.
All right, I think we got it.
Suppose Phil, let's cut that all out.
Most people would say that BP were the golden days. of
Golden
the
years.
show.
BP was golden years. PP, it's gone way downhill in the PP years.
So I'm cutting that.
Cutting this? Come on, man, don't cut this. Phil has all this power over the show. He can just, I don't remember anything I say, so he can cut parts he doesn't like, and I totally forget they were even there. So if you're hearing this, it's because of Phil's kindness and wanting you to hear this. So this episode, I think, is about what I just said, not the BP PP stuff, but the stuff about people in my life that have impacted it. And a lot of this is very personal for me. These are, exceptional humans whose story invigorated me the first time I heard it. Being around them is inspiring, And so trying to bring that to all of you in a way that made sense for the person telling the story and for the person listening. And I think the Hunting Collective very much is about gathering perspectives from all over this country, all over this world, and trying to mash them all together in a better understanding of hunting and why we do it. And so this first best of is very much exactly that. It's very much the ethos of this show and why I wanted to do it in the first place. And so you're going to hear probably the audio quality won't be as good because it was BP.
Uh-huh.
BP, it was bad.
Yeah, you will hear a difference.
You'll hear a difference because it is BP.
It is BP.
And these were all done in random places around the country. And so that's what this show is about. This best of is about the people in my life that I feel like have been most impactful and have the best stories to tell. And so hopefully you enjoy these conversations. And I've chosen 3 people that I think fit that bill. The first of those 3 people, his name is Wyman Meinzer. You know who that is, Phil?
I do not know.
Let me tell you. I'll tell you all about Wyman. I first met Wyman on a coyote hunt in a little town called Benjamin, Texas. Benjamin, Texas is in the middle of the Big Empty, as Wyman calls it, in northern Texas, just north of Dallas, not too far. It's big, wide open country. And in this interview, you'll hear Wyman describe it. I met Wyman on a coyote hunt, and I was first struck by a few things about him. Number one, anytime he blows on a call, a coyote comes running, and it's pretty much 100% of the time. He is an artist when it comes to hunting and photographing coyotes. He also is a Renaissance man in the way that he looks at the world. He has done things like take an old jailhouse in the town of Benjamin, an old 1800 jailhouse, and turn it into like a cottage that was featured on some fancy pants channel about what's that called?
HGTV.
That's it. How did you know?
I used to work on a lot of shows for HGTV.
Oh, you did?
I did.
So he was on like HGTV just because he took an old jailhouse and turned it into his family's home for a while, and it's a beautiful place. He is also a biologist by trade and has been trapping and killing coyotes for most of his life. He has a book. The first time I met him, he showed me this book that goes back to the 70s of every single coyote he ever killed, where he killed it, who he was with, how much it weighed. He has blood. He would take his fingerprint, put it in their blood, put it on his book. So he has this treasure trove, this totem of his history with one animal. And his life is really defined by predator hunting and coyote hunting and trapping, as you'll hear in this podcast. When I first met Wyman, I immediately knew this is a special person. Not only because his hunting prowess is out there for everyone to see, but he's got just a depth of soul that you just don't find many places. And you definitely don't find it in the big, wide empty of northern Texas. And so I was able to do a lot with Wyman. I've spent a lot of time with him over the years and enjoyed every single moment of it. We did a film called Chasing Light with Yeti about Wyman, about his life, so you could go watch that. We did this podcast and a bunch of other stuff with a man who is a writer, a photographer, a friend of many. So I think very highly of this man. So we've cut out a little bit about his life and the early part of his life, which he lived in a dugout on an old ranch, I believe called the Pitchfork Ranch, near his home. He lived in this dugout, lived alone, got all his money from trapping, and it was a pretty transformative time in his life. So as you're listening to this, understand that what I pulled here is the genesis of this great man's life, and he reflects on it in some beautiful ways. So enjoy Wyman Meinzer. Wyman?
Yes, sir, Ben.
How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
Oh, we're in Benjamin, Texas, are we not?
Yes, sir.
You lived here your entire life?
Yes, I was raised on a ranch about 11 miles out of Benjamin. Yeah.
You don't have to tell your age, but
yeah,
you've been here a while.
67 years old. I'll go ahead and be honest.
Okay, I didn't want to pressure you into anything at all. Well, that's an impressive feat, given a lot of times today, guys my age don't stick around their home place very, very often.
Yeah. I really didn't think that I would once I got out of college.
Yeah.
Went to Texas Tech University, but I came back and circumstances were such that I felt like this would be a good place to headquarter.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
Yeah. In spades.
Yeah.
In spades. Well, I mean, might as well start at the very beginning. I mean, you grew up here with a brother and a sister, right?
Right.
You grew up on a ranch not far from here. Just tell me about growing up, and you call it the Big Empty.
Well, the ranch that we were reared on is a 27,000 acre, which is not a big outfit in this part of the country, but it's decent size. Definitely good for a couple of boys to be raised on. My dad was a foreman there, and he was there for 30 years, and raised up as a cowboy, and learned to work cattle and break horses and the whole deal. And but my main love was hunting.
Yeah.
And studying the natural history of various species, and I was always going and collecting bird eggs and inspecting birds that I'd shot with a BB gun and keying them out, and it lent to what I'm doing today for sure.
Yeah, and we were talking about this at breakfast this morning, and even over whiskey last night about growing up in that environment and how that shapes you and what that makes you, and the grit that it gives you, the drive to work hard. I mean, you were raised in a hard work and hard scramble life.
Right.
In this country, it's pressure. I mean,
it is. It's not an easy place to live. We find a lot of old house places. We found there on the ranch. In the early 1900s, people really came in here in droves and, farmed, cut out a little piece of parcel of land and tried to farm it. And through time, the land pretty well weeded out to where it's now probably at its carrying capacity. Early on, it was just, overgrazed more or less, I guess you could say. And so even today, though, it's hard because, it's just mostly big ranch country, and ranching practices have changed. You don't need as many people working on ranches. And so the town of Benjamin itself used to be a population of like 600. Now it's like 258. But that's basically what it should be.
Yeah.
And so my dad and mom were both raised in the Depression years, raised hard. My dad was in a large family where they parceled out the kids to other families where they could have enough to eat. My mom lived in dugouts and tents during the Depression. She has bad memories about it.
Wow.
But they were resilient people, and they taught my brother and I, especially my brother and I, my sister, not so much, but taught us, how to be independent and to appreciate doing things for yourself. Yeah. And I appreciate that very much. And it's been good to me because so much of my life revolves around, doing things your own way and trying to figure things out and to make it work, make do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the early part of your story is very much just, the life most kids would dream about, right? I mean, roaming around this country on horseback.
Roaming at will. Your parents did not, stay on you constantly, where are you going? It was just like, watch for rattlesnakes. That was the warning when we were kids. When you go outside, y'all watch for rattlesnakes. And if you got a half a mile from the house with your BB gun or your 22 and mother missed you, well, she'd start hollering. You could hear her a mile away. She had a shrill voice, and you knew it was time to come back home. But they just didn't keep a tight rein on you. You were allowed to go out and be yourself and explore and be creative and doing, finding things to do.
Yeah.
And it was a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good life.
Well, I mean, you got a good power description. I mean, describe for people listening that have never been to this country. Of course, this is you call it north central Texas, I would say. What this country looks like. I mean, the land, the animals, just the feeling of being here.
Well, first off, weather-wise, we have some fairly cool cold winters, very hot summers. So it's kind of one extreme to the other. We have thousands of acres, what they call the Badlands, the NOCO Badlands, Knox County Badlands. And it's just the old red beds, ancient red beds, apparently old riverbeds, because you'll find gravel, layers of gravel in the edges of the cliffs with a lot of mammoth bones. I've actually had paleontologists come out, and I'd show them these skeletons, and they say, yes, that's mammoth, that's camel, that's ancient horse bones. And then you have your deep soil sites where there's a lot of mesquite. The Badlands pretty well is dominated by juniper, and then your deep soil sites are mesquite, and Tobosa grass, buffalo grass. We have white-tailed deer, a lot of wild feral hogs, a lot of coyotes, and quite a few bobcats. We don't have any foxes to speak of. They live more or less in town, where they're protected from coyotes, because coyotes eat them like hot dogs.
I thought you were going to say they hang out at the bars.
They hang out in people's garages, up in the attics, because if they get out of town, the coyotes eat them.
Yeah.
And of course, we have in the wintertime, this is a central flyway, so we have a good population of snow geese, and the Canadians come through. Yeah. Not a lot of ducks. Back in the 60s, I've seen a transition in the waterfowl, the makeup of the waterfowl population. In the 60s, it was just the opposite. We had a lot of cranes, sandhill cranes, that stayed here through the winter. Tremendous, almost unimaginable numbers of greenheads, canvasbacks, and a few Canadian geese, and now it's just reversed.
Yeah,
we have a few cranes come in early, along with your teal and those little species, and then the cranes move on up to the Panhandle.
Yeah, they go west, huh?
Right, and then the ducks, we just don't have the duck numbers we did in the 60s. And I don't understand why, because we've got as much or more water.
Yeah,
but
something to do with the flyway north. Probably,
it may have. They've switched their flyway, their flight pattern.
So.
Yeah,
I bet so. Well, I mean, that's a good description of this place, and I mean, it's shaped you in a lot of ways. I mean,
it has. Like I say, growing up on the ranch and being raised as an independent person, and of course, when I went to Texas Tech, I studied wildlife biology.
Yeah.
And then whenever I left, instead of getting a job, I became a coyote hunter, professional coyote hunter, and living out on a pitchfork ranch in a half dugout. And there's where you really became independent, because you'd go into town once a week to get groceries, and basically you were your own man. I mean, there was nobody to ask questions to, nobody to talk to exchange ideas with. It was just you and the land.
Yeah, I want to go through that specific, but I don't know if you've ever talked about, other than the time you told me the first time you saw a hippie on the Texas Tech campus. The first time you encountered a hippie who was having a deep conversation with some fire ants.
With some red ants, some harvest ants. Yeah.
So he was probably having a good talk with him.
Apparently so.
Their circumstance and his circumstance.
Exactly.
But you went to Texas Tech, and wildlife biology was the choice of trade.
Right.
Was that just because the intense connection you had to this place and the animals,
yes,
all those things, that's what drove you to that, and then and the study of that kind of reaffirmed,
right? And I knew there were no job opportunities. I was aware of that at the time, but I was determined to get a degree in wildlife biology. Back then they called it wildlife management, and I could have been a cowboy, heaven forbid. I love cowboys. I love that life way. I still cross paths with them, work with them in some of my photo shoots. I can speak their language. It's just that I've smelled enough horse sweat in my life.
Yeah.
It's just that I really loved working with wild creatures. That, and I actually aspired at one time to be a paleontologist.
Oh.
And found out that it took too much math, and so I'm not a mathematician. but I still have a great interest in paleontology.
Yeah. Well, so you graduate from college, you go through the process there, and you decide pretty much immediately, right, to come back, become a professional coyote hunter.
Mm-hmm.
You lived in a was it a dugout or
it was
a
an old
shack?
half dugout. It was built in 1948 when the Pitchfork bought that portion of the ranch from the Matador.
Yeah.
And I actually knew the man who helped build it in 1948, and so it was just a little one-room shack with a fireplace in the end, and partially, the windows up was out of the ground and the windows down was below ground, and it was in the middle of a 168,000 acre ranch, and of course I had surrounding ranches that I hunted on also.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Beggs, 50,000 acres, and you had an old fellow named Hubert Young, and he had 10,000 acres. And then you had the Springer, who was 40,000, and another 10,000 acre ranch. And that was before commercial hunting. I was the only guy out there. I never heard a rifle shot. I never saw another person hunting. The years that I spent, 3 winters that I spent, actually 5 winters. I spent 3 winters living in the dugout, and then 2 other winters hunting out there, still working out of Benjamin. I never saw anybody else hunting. And it was like you step back into the 1800s and 19th century.
Yeah. You're living in
amazing.
You're living in a one-room dugout.
Yes.
That was very much akin to when it was built in the 40s.
Right.
I've seen pictures. I mean, it was literally a one-room hole in the in the side of the hill.
Exactly.
And you get up every morning. You were running trap lines, weren't you, too?
Running traps.
Too.
Mm-hmm.
And just talk about the daily life, because I think we've talked a lot about this in this visit when we visited a bunch of times, but in this particular visit, a lot about how soft our life is right now.
Yeah.
How I'm trying to escape the softness of life by going out and hunting.
Right.
You came out of college and plunged into the headlong
Yeah.
into the hardest life imaginable.
It was, of course, I didn't go on a dog pull sled or anything like that. I had my 4-wheel drive pickup, but every morning was a ritual. Every day I took out, when I moved in, I took 5,000 rounds of .22 ammunition and a couple of hundred rounds of high-powered rifle to shoot my coyotes with. My .22 I used to dispatch animals and traps in practice.
Mm-hmm.
And of course my food stuff. And then in the mornings I would get up before daylight, eat breakfast, fix my lunch, same lunch every day, a summer sausage sandwich, canteen of water, and a peanut patty candy bar that I would not eat a piece of it until I caught an animal. When I caught a coyote, I would break a piece off to reward myself. And all day I went along the trap line like 50, 60 miles. And then when I got back to cabin in the evening, I skinned, stretched, and if I had enough time, I would practice shooting with my Winchester Model 94 .22. And then I'd cut my firewood, draw my water for that night for either a bath, only took 1 bath a week, or washing dishes. And then I would finish dinner, wash the dishes, write in my journal, sit in front of the fire, and then go to bed. Every night, 7 days a week, 30 days a month, all winter long. That was a life. And it was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. First winter was fabulous. Second winter got a little tougher. Third winter was real tough because I'd become a little bit more social. And living down there, you were pretty restricted.
I mean, you're a young man at this point.
Right. I needed to see somebody.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while, a cowboy would come by and I'd say hi to him, be able to talk to him. But other than that, I'd go a day or 2 days without saying anything. And that kind of got to you after a while.
Yeah, I imagine it would. So you're killing coyotes, bobcats. You're earning money,
right,
from the pelts,
right.
So you were, how many coyotes a month? How many coyotes a season? And how many bobcats? How much money would you make?
Well, we didn't. Our coyotes here in Texas weren't worth that much. They were $15 a piece. But I needed to catch 4 animal units a day, and I considered an animal unit a coyote. Bobcat was worth 2 animal units. A fox 3/4 of a unit. And with 4 animal units a day, I could make my pickup payment, my college loan payment, and buy groceries and have some spending money. And so my goal was to get 4 animal units a day, and I did.
A lot of people nowadays say, "Oh, I'm a professional hunter." That is what you were. It was professionally hunting and trapping.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I had so many questions about that time in your life, but one of I always thought is like, what are your main takeaways? Because,
well, I tell you, with age, you become mellowed out. You don't hunt as much, but I can look back on those years and realize that hunting at that level, people can't fathom being that involved in hunting today. Back in the 1800s, yeah. But you become so involved in the natural history of the species that you were after. Every track, you studied the tracks, you studied what you thought was the time of day or night the tracks were made. You watched weather patterns. You anticipated animal movements in accordance to weather patterns. You learned that coyotes travel in certain areas in the daytime versus nighttime. And your average person today who goes out and, quote, hunts has no idea of that level of understanding of the natural history of animals that you have to have in order to be a professional hunter.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade for those years.
Yeah. Well, not only were you a professional hunter, but you were, as a biologist,
right,
logging your kills, taking blood samples.
Exactly. I was very much a note taker. And I would document each animal, the distance that I shot it or the trap I caught it in, what foot I caught it on. And I still have all that information today.
Yeah. From all the way back. How many coyotes in the journals now?
I've with a rifle I've shot 1,760 with the rifle alone, and that's not counting traps. It was another 1,500 or so with traps.
Yeah.
877 bobcats. And so and it's not something that I'm necessarily proud of. It's just that was a way of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as an older person, I don't hunt like I used to. I have a softer heart than I used to have.
Well, that's always the most interesting storyline about, when I think about your life, which is this tremendous tapestry of, something that's to be admired, really, and all its stages. But when you're back there and you're killing these coyotes for a living, a lot of people nowadays might say, well, what a terrible thing. You're going out there and just taking life in wholesale to make money, and you're selling furs, and in the modern day that might be looked at as a negative to the landscape. But describe in that place and time, how you thought about the animal, your respect for it. I mean, I know just from knowing you that that's the case.
I did have, and I still do. I mean, I'll always have great respect for the coyote. I think they're a very intelligent an animal that can make the changes with man, whereas the wolf could not, and they were pretty well exterminated from Texas. But the coyote is very adaptive, and very sharp. And so early on, one of the reasons that I started taking notes was that I just wanted to learn more about them. And so the earliest notes came whenever I was in like a sophomore at Tech, and I wanted to become a better coyote hunter. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to understand the feeding habits of coyotes. So I conducted a full year of research on my own by collecting stomach samples, fecal samples, and documenting the areas, separating them by vegetation, topographical, geological features. And then I received a grant to study another year. And so, all of this note taking has been a very positive thing, because to this day, I'll sit down, I'll get bored someday and just sit down with all those notes and go through them just to remember.
Yeah.
And I'll see things that I've forgotten, in 30 years since I've seen them. And it just continues to be a learning process.
Yeah.
Even after all these years.
Yeah. I mean, when you were a professional hunter back in those days, you're living in a dugout. Do you have any, you sit here now and your grandfather and time has passed, you look back and have any remorse for the animals you killed?
Yes. Yes, I do. I can recall some instances, especially one day that touched my heart. And to this day, and that has been 44 years ago, to this day still tugs at my heart. And it was a coyote I'd caught in a trap. And I don't know, that coyote, he just sat there and just looked at me. Didn't try to fight. And then whenever I dispatched it, there was a look of helplessness that it knew it was going down, and I sat down in my pickup and cried. After all those animals I'd taken, that particular animal made me sit down in my pickup and cry. And to this day, I still think about it, and it tugs at my heart. And another one in particular is one of the first really neat photographs I'd taken, because at that time I was working on my photography. I remember I caught him in the J2 pasture on the Pitchfork, real rough country, just savagely rough country. And it was at the dead end of an old bulldozer road, and I caught this big male coyote. And I mean, he stood up and fought me like a lion. I mean, I got out of the pickup, and he was snarling. He was caught up in a number 4 Newhouse trap, no way of getting out. And I had the greatest respect for that animal. And I pulled the camera out and took a photograph of him. And I mean, he's got his teeth bared, and he's just saying, I know this is it, bring it on. And I still think of that animal, and that bravery that he showed in the face of death. That picture was selected by Texas Monthly as one of their greatest pictures of 25 years that they'd published that magazine.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great, I find myself, I got a lot of years to live, hopefully a lot of years to hunt, but I find myself examining that relationship with the animals that you kill.
Right.
I mean, because you say you kill thousands.
Right.
Upon thousands of these animals, but it doesn't mean that you don't have an emotional connection to them.
Right.
Today and then, like I said, it was just your way of life.
It was a way of life.
It's what you did.
It was a way of life, and I was enjoying just being a part of the land. Yeah. Every day, the sun sets, the sun rises, the weather changes. All of those things still have an impact on me today. I still refer back to those years and what I learned in animal movements, animal patterns. Like I can say, like for instance, a couple of days ago, I saw a rattlesnake crawling. Anytime that I start seeing an immediate an increase in animal movement, when I'm walking in the mornings, you'll start seeing various creatures' tracks suddenly appear, and I'll tell Celinda, my wife, we got weather coming. And I learned that from those years as a professional hunter, because I studied, I lived and breathed those habits and those weather changes and how they affected animals' behavior. And it still serves me today.
Yeah, that's amazing. You don't become an animal yourself. You're out there.
Sort of.
Yeah, not speaking for some days, and I'm sure it can feel like that.
You
get in your own head.
Yeah, you get in your own head big time. You better like yourself, is all I can say.
You better like to hear from yourself.
You better enjoy, just, appreciate you being you, because you're going to learn yourself.
When you were doing that, did you think, hey, look, 40 years from now, I'm going to look back and these are going to be the golden years? Do you think, man, I'm a crazy son of a bitch for doing this? I mean, was there a self-realization at any point during those years?
I realized that the days would end. And I remember drawing on the wall, and it's been covered up since then. It was the last few days of that first winter, That first winter was the golden winter. That was the best because I'd been seemingly all my life in school, as most guys that go to college realize. You go from in my days, first grade to college.
Yep.
And there's no break. And it's like I'd been going to school forever, and I was sick of it. And, man, going out and being on your own and, of course, immersing yourself in the land with a rifle. I always loved to hunt. Wasn't that big of a fisherman, but I loved to hunt. And I love just big, wide open country with lots of elbow room. And I realized something told me that first winter at the end that my days were limited. This freedom would someday end. This level of freedom. I mean, I'm free and happy today. I'm doing what I want to do. But back then, man, it was really indescribable.
Yeah.
And I drew on the door, on the closet door, and I had a little tiny closet in the corner in that dugout, half dugout. And I drew a coyote in a trap. And in the distance were these two prominent hills called Double Mountains. They've been mentioned in Ronald McKenzie's books on his fight with the Indians, Comanches in the 1870s. They've been landmarked for probably 10,000 years. But I could see them in the distance from my trap line. And I drew those hills, and I drew this coyote in a trap and drag marks leading up to where he'd been caught up and couldn't go any further. And I wrote beneath it something to the effect of, to this end, let's see, what was it? I too shall to realize this end, meaning that this grand life of freedom will someday be over. And it got painted over a few years ago, and it just makes me sick. I'm thinking about going back out there and trying to redraw
it on.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a photo of it, or just?
I did not.
No.
I did not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that.
It was, to this end, I too shall pass. To this end, I too shall pass. And it was a coyote in a trap, and knowing that the end was near, and seeing that great land of those hills in the distance, and knowing the freedom, and it would be over. And that's the way I felt at the end of that first winter. And it was true. I've never been able to feel that kind of magic again. I've had great life, wonderful life of traveling and seeing the land and going on ranches where nobody else hardly ever goes, but with a camera in hand. But there's always that restriction now that I didn't have back then. I was young, totally, completely healthy, lots of ammunition, and more land than I knew what to do with.
Yeah.
And I've never known that since. And, of course, now with commercial hunting taking over, that land doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I can still go to that cabin, and I'm welcome to. The rancher says, hey, go out there and do whatever you want to do. You know, you're part of this ranch as well. You're part of the history. But all that country's leased. And so I go down there and I work on the cabin. I'll pop open a beer, eat some deer sausage, sit down on the porch, and remember. And then I'll leave.
Yeah. I mean, that isn't every person in some way chasing that sense of freedom. Like, not everybody knows exactly how they're going to get to it.
Believe me, whenever I give presentations and I talk about, I have one presentation that I give quite often, and it's called The Evolution of a Texas Photographer. And I give that part of my life, and almost without fail, people come up to me, older people especially, and say, how I wish I would have taken the opportunity to do that, because there's only a small window of time. If I give presentations, say to a college class, I will every time, 100% of the time, I will say, when you finish college, you have this small window of opportunity to do exactly what you want to do. And I said, when you let that window pass, it's over. You become that in that established line of life, in that so-called rut, and it's hard to turn back. I said, so if you have any kind of a dream, some heartfelt message that you want to go try out for a year, do it. Because it is sad to talk to those people who will visit with me and say, I had that opportunity and I didn't take it.
Yeah.
But I can go If I pass tomorrow, I have no regrets.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
All right, that was Wyman Meinzer. Thanks to him, thanks to his wife Celinda, thanks to their kids for letting me come and bother him and Benjamin at his home. I love that guy. So you can go back and listen to that podcast with Wyman and hear the rest of it. There's a whole lot of good stories you didn't get out of that bit. So go find that podcast, download it, and listen to it. Even if you already have, it's worth the time.
After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.
We're going to move on to someone else in my life that, Phil, you might not be aware of. Did you ever hear the Dusan Smetana podcast?
No.
Mother of Lord. So, well, let me tell you a little bit, Phil, about Dusan. When you break into this clip that we've cut for this podcast with Dusan Smetana, we're going to be in his house here on the outskirts of Bozeman, right on the Gallatin River. And it was actually like maybe a year or so ago that we recorded this. And Dusan likes to sit by the fire. I don't even think he has a TV in his house. He likes to sit by the fire, drinking plum brandy, telling stories. Outside of his house is a big building that holds all his homing pigeons. He races them, these homing pigeons. And so to paint the picture, we're sitting there drinking plum brandy by the fire in the home that he helped build himself when he moved here. You'll hear all that story. And then homing pigeons are just flying around, and he just like watches them as they go. And he's watching every little part of how they fly and which one's in first and which one's the fastest. And that's the scene of this podcast. But Dusan, as you'll hear, immigrated here from communist Czechoslovakia. And his story of how, the most impactful thing about this, I think, to me, was how Dusan grew up hunting in a very foreign place to me, or probably all of you listening, how they looked at hunting in Czechoslovakia in his youth, and how he brought those principles over to America. Here's a guy who dreamed of Montana, not even knowing what it was. Like, heard crazy stories of what America might be like as a child, and for some reason dreamed of Montana. And as far away as Montana was from his tangible and intangible life, he found his way here just through pure want and grit, and then made his way to Montana and has built quite the life here and is quite the photographer. So by happenstance, these first 2 folks in this podcast are photographers. But Dusan has a lot to say, not only about raising kids, but about living life and his story. So let that inform you. And as we move through this podcast, you'll know that you're getting to hear the genesis of Wyman Meinzer and now the genesis of this man, Dusan Smetana. And both of those, they both became renowned outdoor photographers, and they couldn't have come from more different backgrounds. And so I think it was really cool to hear that from Dusan. And so you excited, Phil, for this one?
Yeah, this guy sounds like a
most interesting man in the world.
Yeah.
And I got to just take you over to see him here after we're done. And we'll have some plum brandy.
That sounds great.
We'll rip it out. Dusan is an amazing human being. Not only you hear it in his voice, you just hear it in his voice, the way he speaks, his sensibilities. It's all laid bare. And this clip from our podcast with Dusan Smetana. Enjoy.
I guess I grew up on an older road, a pedal to the metal.
Dusan, how are you, sir?
I am well.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm very well. I'm drinking a little bit of mint tea with a spike of plum brandy on a. It's not actually it's not that chilly of a Montana day, is it?
No, it's beautiful. Blue sky, sunshine, Slivovitz time.
It's beautiful, and for folks that like, I always try to start these podcasts. Obviously, people can't see where we are. Can you give your best description of where we're sitting right now, and really just, I guess, your homestead here in Bozeman?
Well, we are in Bozeman. In my house, I have a small farm by Gallatin River.
Yeah.
Where we raise different kind of animals for us. We have sheep and pigs and chickens and ducks and turkeys and homing pigeons.
Homing pigeons, yeah, we're going to talk about that a lot.
And just the heaven. You know, I love Montana. I love the name. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you get to move here. You get to experience that.
Yeah, I'll be right not too far. Like I said, it's like a 2-minute commute up the road and around the corner, and
5 minutes across the river.
5 minutes across the river, and we're sipping tea and brandy by the fire at your place. Hey, your wife, Lorca, and yourself, did you guys put a lot of this house together?
We did. We tried to research. When you travel, you see different things around the world, and you see how people build differently, how they design different homes or structures to live. And once I came and sit down with the architect, we kind of told him what we want. We really like to read in heat and a concrete floor. We like insulated house, so you don't waste your energy heating it.
That's right.
And we like the simplicity, modern. You know, the concrete floor are awesome for cleaning, and we knew we were going to have a kid, so somehow, figure out how not to let them just destroy the house.
Yes.
So you have that kind of in mind. If I would knew that, I would definitely not put any kitchen cabinets. I just put a bunch of hay bales and drain in the middle, and I think that will do.
That would be fine, yes.
You just got new house and kids, so you'll see how much damage he'll do.
That's right. And and my wife and I discussed that. She's like, well, we could get the nice carpet. I said, we could get the nice carpet. But every nice thing we get has the ability to be made less so by our little dude. Although he's pretty low maintenance.
Yeah.
But still.
But it's nice to have a house, nice to own some land. And another thing or concept of our house was to make, not too big, our house is 1,900 square feet, perfect for 2 kids and couple, and no maintenance. So if you put metal roof and if you put stucco and plastering inside, there's not much maintenance. So you don't want to, and if you choose good windows so you don't have to repaint them, then you just, house is never done, but you try to minimize all the extra expenses down the road.
Yeah, and you have quite the homestead here. I mean, it feels like, I don't know how most would describe it, but it's like a farmette where you have, you're right here on the Gallatin River. It's freaking beautiful, and farm animals around, and you guys are square with plum brandy and a nice fire here, and it's a beautiful view.
Yeah, life is good on the farm. I would love to get even more land, but there is not much here available. But I think to have a little farm, it's a security for me. I grew up in a farm, and I grew up in a small village where the animals kind of take care of you. So, and you can get the wood. So you kind of eliminate the thinking that food comes from grocery store and the heat comes from furnace.
Yeah, you have to chop the heat.
Yeah,
chop the heat up and
chop the heat, and you raise your animals, and you butcher them, and you eat them, and that's more security to me than have several $1,000s in the bank. If my house is surrounded with firewood and freezers are full of meat, bring it.
Yes, bring it. Yeah, you have chickens and goats here. What else?
We have sheep.
We have
Icelandic sheep.
Yeah.
And I got that idea from traveling to Argentina in the last 20 years or so, and I love how they cook that, what they call asado, lamb asado over the fire.
Yes.
And after, I think, a couple of dinners in U.S., I noticed that the lamb was the most expensive meat.
Yes.
And then suddenly just clicked 6 years ago. I was like, well, why can't I have my own lamb, sheep, and raise.
And here you are.
And I talked with my wife, who did the research. We find the Icelandic sheep, and they're low on maintenance. They're very hardy. They don't need any structures, and they're very yummy. So it's a nice combination with the hunting. When you get the elk, antelope, or deer, there's not much grease there. But with the antelope, with the lamb, you just have extra fat.
It's a grease and fat there.
So
we came over here a month or so, maybe even longer ago, and you did the asada for us over the fire, and it was unbelievable. So
good.
Tell folks, and you gave me a lot of brandy then too, so it could have helped out. I don't know.
More you drink, better we
sound.
The
more you drink, the better we sound. The better the lamb tastes. Tell people about your strategy for making this out, and where you learned it, and your influences from Argentina, and I know that
as you get older, you try to. I think you get more into what I call homey. You just get into cooking. You get into gardening.
Yeah.
You get into little skills and hobbies that you always want to do but never had time. Those also could be challenges. You get into raising sheep and you try to figure out how to hay. So then you get in a tractor and you try to cut and bale. So it's I still very entertained, with all these activities, and I love it because it completely distracts me from the photography. I don't have to think of framings and all the other thoughts you have when you're taking photos. I completely forget about them. I always say I'm a full-time farmer and part-time photographer.
You've crafted quite the job title. Living here, you're not. Listen, a lot of people glorify living off the land, or just a lifestyle of living off what's around you, and you have that here. And specifically around the sheep, how do you treat them? You raise them. When do you harvest one? How do you treat that with your family?
So the lambs are usually born middle of May, beginning of May, and we have 20, 30 lambs running around, and it's kind of cute to see kids going in there and lifting those animals and looking at them and put them back and try to catch them again. And we graze them in our land or our neighbor's land. We make small paddocks of 2-3 acres. And once a week, we'll move them. So we rotate it. And nice thing being in the river bottom, you have so much submoisture that the grass grows nicely.
Easy.
And by the time you finish one end, you can start another one. Now, when it comes September and October, these sheep, they're wild. They're from Iceland, and they haven't been improved by British scientists to gain weight and lose some other traits. So they eat bark. They eat leaves. So we don't have to deworm them since we have just 20, 30 of them.
Yeah.
And when October comes, end of October, then we slaughter the lambs. We keep the replacement sheep. Then we slaughter maybe some old sheep that they're getting old. And, we use some of that meat, and I would use lots of other parts of those animals for my hunting dogs.
Yeah.
For the bird dogs. I feed them the lungs, liver, heart, even stomach, the tripe. I open the stomach and empty the green and cut it up, and that's 2-3 meals each stomach for the dogs with all the enzymes and minerals and nutritions.
Yeah. Now your kids you have 2 children. Do they take part in the entire process with you?
They help. They watch. They help eat. They still don't know that they're eating liver. They like liver with onions. That's actually traditional or big tradition in Europe, where as soon as you harvest any animal and you have access to fire, you chop onions and you eat the
liver.
The red deer liver or roe deer liver. So it's, they help and they see that. Now, I don't know if they're going to pursue that kind of lifestyle we have here, but options are there for them. Hopefully they'll remember. But I am going exactly back as I grow up. I see that I want to take care of myself. I want to take care of the firewood. I want to grow our own potatoes and carrots. I want to have my own honey. It's 30 years ago I would not think that I would have that because it was so distant. But
yeah, well, it seems to calm you a bit. Those things.
Yeah, I think the influence in your childhood, how you grow up and where you grow up, it just influences you, and then later on you seek that.
Yeah.
And it's it's up to you how deep you're going to go with that.
Yeah, I mean, you're in your professional life, you're a photographer for many brands. Of course, Cabela's being a big one. How do you balance those two things? I mean, you're traveling. We were just talking before we hit record about your traveling and not being around Montana as much as you'd like to be, but getting to travel the world and knowing a lot of places and allowing that to inform how you live here in Montana.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate in the last 25 years. I did get to travel quite a bit around the world. But it's always nice to come home.
Yeah.
You got to do something for a living. So I don't think I have a bad gig. I mean, I think it's wonderful to just take photos and meet new people and interact, learn about different languages, cultures, meet people who are in all kind of professions and hear their stories. Talk to hunting guides in South Africa or Australia or Germany and just see what's their lives about, how their backgrounds look like, how do they shelter their animals, what kind of fire, what kind of wood they use.
Yeah.
All those things are so interesting for me. And so the traveling is great, but one bad thing that I said, or not bad, but it's just weird, that I don't know very much about Montana. I get these requests from local magazines, and I never been to those places. Montana is so big.
Yes.
So I would like to change it a little bit and explore more of Montana and kind of balance with the traveling. I mean, traveling is about 4 months a year, but the rest of the time I'm here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, this is, as I said, moving here for me. I mean, I feel like the immense opportunity to explore the West could take me 30 years, and I still wouldn't have much knowledge of what I'd want to go explore. But that's a fun idea to have. I mean, I don't know. I think what informs a lot of your life is how you grew up. I mean, that's and where you grew up.
Yeah, this is a big playground.
Yes.
I mean, if you're a hunter and fisherman and skier and river guide or kayaker or mountain climber, ice climber, I mean, we have it.
Yes.
I mean, it's just amazing the variety of the outdoor sports we have here. And
the people here. Last time we came here for the Asada, I was struck that in your house was like this wonderful bunch of wonderful people, and they were from all over this country and this world that had collected here around your place and around this river and this state. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
I mean, people in Bozeman are really nice. I mean, people in Montana in general are nice, and they're inquisitive. You meet these locals, they're asking you questions.
Yeah.
They're these ranchers, they see where you come from. What are you doing here? Why do you want to hunt in this place? Or, and you get to meet, and then they go, oh, we remember that. Our grandfather was from Czechoslovakia, or he was from Germany, or I never felt once living in the U.S. that somebody would be prejudiced because I come from a different country.
Yeah.
I think it works to our advantages.
Yes.
I always say, and there's so much public land to hunt. And on top of it, there's so much private land that you could hunt. You just have to go and knock on the door, not 1 month before the season open or the opening day, but go there in May and June and
put a little work in. Maybe.
Put a little work, yeah. Help them with the cattle, help them with the fence, and not too many doors will be closed.
That's right. Yeah, I found it. I found a lot of places in the country, but especially here. I mean, Texas has its own way of treating people and its own culture, and there's some bravado and brashness there. But here in Montana, it's welcoming. I mean, I don't speak like they speak here, nor do you.
You bet.
But I mean, you've got quite a community along this river of people that are your neighbors and your community.
Yeah, and my wife is involved. She loves the local community. She's part of this group of women of the dirt. There's a group of 80 or 90 ladies.
Whoa.
I call them dirty women.
Dirty.
And they surround themselves with these old experienced people who've been gardening for 60, 70 years, who've been dealing with animals and issue in Montana for many years, and just share the information. They exchange eggs for breeding stocks or, I don't know, different type of chickens and what tools to use, how to check the soil for pH, and a million other things.
Yeah, don't listen, everybody out there. Listen, don't Google dirty women Montana. You're not going to get that club.
Woman of the Dirt. That's
Woman
the
of
proper
the Dirt.
name.
Woman of the Dirt Club. Now, your wife is a very impressive person as well, and you guys have the life you have carved out here is amazing, and your kids are amazing. I mean, they look you in the eye, they shake your hand. I mean, they're wonderful people in their own right. I mean, and what are your philosophies on raising children? And I mean, you brought them here to Montana for a reason, I'm sure.
Yeah, I did. I love kids. I love being with them.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the greatest example when I was a kid. My parents were divorced when I was a year old, and my father was drinking a lot. So there was lots of struggles there. There were lots of abuses. But I always say that both of the parents showed me a beautiful example how now to do things. Mm-hmm. So I always think about it and just try to do different. Now I've seen some people in my village where they were interacting with the kids, where they were loving them, they were putting hands on them, they were kissing them, they were just, and I always just envy that. And that's what I want to have. So when somebody asked me, when are you going to have kids? I was like, what do you mean when? I mean, I would just, I will have kids as soon as I can. That's part of the life that I want to live. It's nice to raise another set of kids that will appreciate this world and maybe contribute with something and just keep going.
Yeah, your kids are great examples of
thank you.
Well-adjusted human beings. So I think people could learn a lot from the way you guys treat that with their lives and live where they live.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they are good kids, and I read somewhere that they are my kids, but they are not mine. They're the kids of the world.
Yeah.
You basically you can show them, you can take them to places, but you really cannot make them they're going to do their own thing. So I'm very excited to see what would become of them, how they're going to deal with their life, what kind of jobs they'll have. Maybe those jobs are not created yet for them. Everything goes so fast nowadays. Yeah. And see how they're going to balance it. Now, I think I had the advantage to grow up in a poor community, but wealthy on relations between people. And moving to U.S. and living here, I have everything that I can possibly ask for.
Yeah.
We are well paid here. We have the opportunity to do whatever we want. The things are relatively inexpensive. You can save lots of money. And we'll see what happened to them. See how they're going to see, if they're going to see the opportunity or not.
Well, it's such a perspective that you have on that, right? Because, how you grew up is so different how they're growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you can tell them, listen, you are lucky.
Yeah, you can't tell them, but you can overboil that pot, because they were tired of it. So
yeah,
I will, I took my son already to Europe a couple of years ago, and he get to see where I grew up, where I live. He get to see the soccer field that I play soccer, and then he did play. He went to the mountains where we hunt. He saw the cemetery and the church, and just the exposing to those things, I think they should on their own somehow realize when they get back to U.S. that what they have.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that would work. But they need more visits. So we are doing another visit next year to Spain, and I think that is kind of important for kids to see the world so they can put things in perspective.
Yeah, provide perspective and let it go from there.
And we know that too. I mean, you travel, I travel, and you go, like you said, you go to Nepal and you see somebody is holding basket with apples, but has bigger smile than somebody who has a brand new Cadillac.
Yeah. Yeah, we could go on that subject for days. But yes, I think we talked about that last time we were here. And I roughly remember through all the stomach full of lamb and a belly full of brandy that we talked about that. But it is the perspective of the world. It can inform you for sure, but it also can drive you to be a better version of yourself. It certainly has for me, and it's one of those things where I'm always stopping to adjust. If I'm frustrated from traffic or if I'm frustrated from something at work, and I stop and adjust, I'm like, well, how is this bringing me happiness, and why am I not allowing it to? If someone with nothing in Nepal or wherever you find that person can smile and play a song in abject poverty. Why can't I find that same smile when I'm sitting on a heated seat driving to work?
Well, it's a community and it's a people. The realtors have the famous saying, location, location, locations. Well, I think the people. It's kind of more important to me. I mean, it's your personality, it's your uniqueness that you get to use in work or with your friends, and that kind of influence and craft your journey through this world. So if you surround yourself with the right people that help you, they don't drain you.
Yeah.
And outdoors has the tendency to make better people.
Yeah.
I haven't seen on these trips, gosh, I've been, how many? Well, let's say over 100 trips around the world. And you have all these people, you get 10 guests, they go with me or more. Seldom you find someone who is not happy holding fishing rod or gun in their hands. So it's just like, well, what happened to all these nasty people that you read about? All this. Yeah. It's just the outdoors have tendency to just make you better, to relax you. And I don't know if that's the exercise that you get with that hunting or it's just being out there or fresh air.
I'm sure it's a complex tale of what it actually gives you.
But it works. It's a
medicine. It
gives
you something. Yes, it is a medicine. And part of my struggle, and I'm sure you have it too, is that when you get that medicine and you go a while without it, you suffer a bit.
Yeah.
Yourself suffers. You think, well, man, I could use a day just.
So the Bozeman is a perfect example when you have the wilderness experience and the beauty of outdoors, yet you have all the amenity of modern life. I mean, we have electricities, we have propanes, we have roads. It's not too far to town.
A kombucha bar down there. I mean, I think that's my wife said that. I mean, she's not an outdoorsy type of person, really at all. But she just said seeing the mountains provides some comfort that I can't explain. It's like just looking out there and seeing that provides something that I can't. There's something I can't articulate. Like I can articulate because I've been on those mountains. It's that medicine that I can see it every morning. I wake up and be like, if life's getting me down, if I'm spun up in a way that I can't overcome, I'll just go over there and I'll climb that mountain and look around.
Just keep going. And there are millions of acres around here. And one of my favorite things earlier was to go chase elk with a bow.
Yeah.
And by myself for 8 to 10 days, just fill up the backpack with Spam and sardines and bread and bagels and garlic and onions and just go at it. Pretend I was the Indian and just try to mess up with the elk and slip under the open skies. I love that.
Yeah. The access to that. Yeah. I mean, it settles you somehow. Even just knowing it's there, even if you're too busy to get to it all the time. Like, hey, I can see it. At least I know if dire straits are here, I can retreat, get back to that mountain. But you grew up in Czechoslovakia. I mean, I'd love to hear the whole story, really. I mean, tell me about, the place, the people, your parents, your upbringing.
So it's a small village in the Carpathian Mountains named Krivany. About 500-600 people live there. But each house have 3 generations, living together. And I think that was kind of unique because you really were better prepared for the world.
Yeah.
Because you have the comfort of your parents and also the wisdom of your grandparents. And you can reach into that well and just drink it when you need it.
Yeah, you do.
So everybody had their animals. Everybody had the garden. They have communal way of taking turns in grazing the animals. Every morning they would open the gate and all the cows with bells would come out and one guy would take them in the mountains, graze them, bring them back. It was somebody else's turn next day. With sheep, they've done the same thing. It was a small community where hunting was respected. In Czech Republic, the name for hunter is myslivec, which means double meaning. Could be hunter or the one who think.
Yeah.
Because the hunter actually have to make the decision to see which animal to eliminate from the pool. He look at the stag and said, "Oh, the stag is too old. He needs to get out." He was danger goring other stags, or he was no good. Or there were younger animals where they didn't grow well, so they need to be eliminated from the pool.
Yeah, and we talked about Meklevik earlier, and it just, it reminded me of the responsibility of a hunter.
Of the hunter, yeah. And you got to go to school. I think we went for a couple of years or 1 year to school, and you have to learn the fauna and flora, which was kind of fun. A few Latin names. You had to learn how many eggs pheasant lays, what's the incubations. And you learn about stream, about fish, about trees, different kind of tree, hardwood, softwood. And then it was kind of interesting. Then you had to put as many hours you put on working around forest. For example, you were building tree stands, you were picking trash, you were building bridges over the streams. How many hours you put, that counts towards better selections of the game you could hunt. For example, if you put 10 hours, you only get to hunt rabbits. But if you put 100 hours, you get to hunt red stag.
Wow.
So it was something more than just go buy a license and go hunting.
Yeah.
Which, it's just a different system. But people were more connected to it. But so as a kids, we loved to hang with hunters. I mean, those whiskery, gray faces, they were... drinking plum brandy. They have a little flask, and they were sitting by the fire and telling stories about how they outfox fox, sitting in the haystacks and just waiting for them to come, or wolf stories. And of course, every kid wanted to be cowboy and Indian. We had these books from Germany by writers named Karl May. Then we have some books, Fenimore Cooper, The Last of the Mohicans.
Yes.
And I love reading it. I mean, I was a book rat. I was reading in a school, in a church, in a train, under blankets, just reading. And I was fascinated by the Wild West, how people can ride horses and sleep in a teepees and shoot their bows and throw spears and live.
Yeah.
So I was always dreaming, I said, man, I would like to do that. And I was 8, 10, 12. And one of those books one year, there was a name, Montana. And I just really loved that name, Montana. It's like, well, I'm going to go there. Okay. Well, you 11, 12, you just really, you cannot predict your future. But, the communists, of course, would not let you leave because everybody would leave and there would be nobody to work for them.
Yeah.
But as things start changing in 1989, the Soviets were losing reins and losing the Cold War. I keep applying for 6 years to get out. I said, I'm going to go to Montana, and I want to see my mother. My mother at that time was living in West Germany.
Okay.
That I did not know very much about her, but I use her as an example that I want to see her as a human rights. I started writing letter to United Nations and everywhere. Wow. And, they said, well, if you put 1 more year to work, I said, okay. And, if you go to military for 2 years, I said, okay, well, I got back from military after a couple of years, and they said, oh, no, we were joking. You're not going anywhere.
Now you're in the military.
Well, now I'm 20, 21. I'm exploding. I'm just troublemaker. I was like, I want to get out. That's what the communism finally grabbed hold of me. Because when you're a kid, you really don't.
Yeah, you don't understand it.
You don't understand what's going on, why all these people are so depressed, why all the people drink, why all the people have no freedom. They cannot own guns. They cannot voice. They cannot do very much. They can just celebrate their march for the communists. They finally grabbed me. That's like, well, this is a strange place. I feel like a sheep in a shelter where I'm just surrounded and told what to do all the time. So more letters, more annoyances for them and me. Until one day I just got this letter that, you can go to U.S., permission granted. I was like, what the heck happened? So there was a chain of command where I have to apply. You have to apply to my direct boss and boss's boss and boss's boss, and 20 other people past that have to approve before you can get to the main guy at the end who was living in Prague.
Yep.
But all of a sudden I just skip all these guys and I wrote him direct letter. That's my human rights to visit my mother and I want to go. And he just replaced it. Well, go, son. So I got the permission. I get to U.S. Embassy in Prague and I see all these German jumping fences, German from East Germany were kind of jumping fences to West German embassy. Yeah. And things were changing slowly in the big cities. But we didn't know that. We were in the mountains. We didn't have any local news or anything other than, what my grandfather was listening to BBC or Voice of America.
Well, it seems like there was a stark change. Like as a child, there was some romance and where you were, and then as you grew up, you started to realize,
there's a bigger world.
There's a bigger world, and and I'm in a communist cage here that I'd like to.
Yeah, and we didn't know anything. The communists would tell us, if you keep working hard, you're going to have really good lifestyle, just like the Russians have. Well, the Russians had worse lifestyle than we did.
Yes.
And also we didn't know anything about the U.S. other than, during the Depression, many Czechs and Slovaks left for America. So we would have every third, fourth house would have a family member that immigrated to U.S. So we really like America.
Did you get a lot of stories back from the U.S.?
We did, but it was all deceiving because my grandfather always said Americans always wear white clothes all day long.
Ooh.
Well, maybe butcher or somebody, but yeah, we don't know. They wear white ties and white clothes.
Yeah, not after Labor Day.
My friends thought that Americans are sitting in the ditches because that's what we were doing as a kids, running in the mountains, sitting in the ditches, put your feet up, stick in one hand and was just beating bushes. And said, all they do is just sit in those ditches and fried chicken come by, they just grab it and eat it.
Sounds pretty good.
Total, science, what do you call it? Sci-fi.
Yeah, sci-fi.
We had no idea how people live in U.S. Absolutely zero. Yeah. So when I come to the U.S. finally, when I get the permissions and I can go, my mother took me to Walmart or Kmart, and I couldn't believe it. From this little store when they were selling beer, butter, wine, and bread, there were
everything. 40
different breads.
Yeah.
20 different butters. Hundreds of different wines and shoes and clothes and tools. I knew pitchfork and shovel and maybe rake. Well, there were tools that had no idea what do you do with. So I spent all day in that store. And next day they asked me where you want to go. Well, back to Walmart. I still have some things to see there. So we were living completely in the darkness.
Yeah.
And, that was 30 years ago, not that far.
No.
And what a different world.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. And your mother came with you?
My mom took a vacation from West Germany. That's what she lived. And she went to Florida. And she decided to stay there for a while. But it wasn't for her. She had a hard time to learn language. And she was kind of disappointed why so many people are so poor with all the possibilities they have. She couldn't understand why everybody were living paycheck to paycheck. So I don't think it was for her. So she left, went back to Germany. And I stayed in Florida for a year, and I couldn't speak any English. It was just shaking hands and moving eyes and smile. It's just kind of interesting feeling. To this day, I still like not to understand. It really...
You enjoyed it.
Yeah, it really just brings something out of you that you really try to get across.
Yeah.
But not orally, but it's
using
moving
your
hands and
emotions,
smile. Yeah. And it was kind of fun. So I stayed and went to school after work. I was working in the boatyard, scraping barnacles and painting boats, and working the body shops, grinding cars and taping windows. Because those jobs, you really don't have to speak English.
That's right. Do you remember the first folks that you would say took you in and
Yeah, so there was people at the Ringling Brothers Circus, and lots of those circus people were from all over Europe.
Yeah.
They immigrated or they got kind of sponsorship or something. And my mother told me about the lady who is from Czech Republic, and she was good on trampoline and trapeze and ropes. Her name was Maria. She was a wonderful lady, and so I just went to her and didn't want to knock on the door because I show up at midnight. So I just spent my first night under the palm tree. And I was so thirsty and so hungry, and I saw these beautiful oranges hanging. So I grabbed one and I bite it, and it was just not ready. But it was this feeling that what the heck am I doing here? In the morning, I start hearing some dishes and noises. So I knock on the door and it says, "Hi, my name is Dusan, and my mom said that she knows friend of your friend, and I was just wondering if you can help me." Lady's looking at me. I was like, "Oh yeah, come on in. Let's have a coffee." So we start talking, and then she asked me, "What am I going to do?" She was living at that time with her grandson, who was 8 years old, and I kind of played with the kid a little bit. And after I stayed there a couple of days, she said, "I stay another week." So I helped her with the house. I was raking lawn, cutting grass, cleaning different things. She said, "I'll stay another month." I said, you know what, you can just stay as long as you want. So she really helps me, to just understand that I need help, and I was able to find a job and take care of myself. But the Florida wasn't for me. I grew up in the mountains. I like to hike. I like to.
Were you always? I know you said Montana was interesting to you from the beginning, but I mean, getting out of communist Czech Republic and getting over here, was it always Montana for you, or did you just lose it and find it again when you got to the States?
No, I always started with Montana. And when teacher, school at the, they call SL classes, English is a second language, they always ask you, what would you want to do? Where'd you want to go? So when I could say Montana, I said, well, I want to go to Montana. I said, well, what are you going to do there? It's like, well, I was in the forestry, so I can be lumberjack, logger. I mean, Montana must have lots of trees. And my teacher, she was very cool. She actually was teaching English on a Garth Brooks tape. So the old tapes, when you put in a recorder, come with a little paper folder.
Yeah.
And when the singer was singing, you could follow with the words.
Agreed.
The problem was there was lots of slang, so we just. Do
you remember any Garth Brooks songs?
Oh yeah, gosh, I remember all of them from that song.
I'm gonna come over.
I got friends in the low places.
Yeah, that's what you were learning English.
I know that was awesome. So that was upgrading, because before that, teacher just came to the board and draw pictures of cat and go, meow meow meow, cat. Woof, 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 dog. So that's how we have to start. You have this 20-some-year adults, and we are learning language.
I'm coming over. We're going to come over and bring Garth Brooks. Drink brandy and sit by the fire and listen to Garth Brooks.
No, those were the good days. And then the school teacher introduced me to another wonderful lady. Her name is Sissy. And she was moving back to Bozeman. So I said, well, may I come with you? And he goes, oh, I would love to take you. She was just very nice. My dear friend now. She was driving a long U-Haul truck with trailer, and she did have no experience. I saw her cutting corners. And I was in military. When I was in military, I was driving semis. I said, I can help with the driving. So I drove her to Montana, and we got here, I think, in 1991, I want to say, or 92, in March. And I parked this U-Haul truck in a Bozeman. It was full of snow. And there was this little girl, barefooted, standing in the snow, looking at me with her arms up, and goes, let me get this straight. Are you moving in or are you moving out? So I thought, well, this is going to be a good place.
Yeah.
And, with all this opportunity that I have to live anywhere else, this was gold mine.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
Okay. Thank you, Dusan. As always, again, if you want to listen to that, go back, find the Dusan Smetana podcast, and listen to the whole thing. There's another hour in there that you missed. It's a worthy hour. So go and find it. Give it a listen if you have some time. Last but certainly not least here is another person that Phil has no idea about. Well, no, you will know this person. You will know this person, I hope.
Okay.
Charles Rodney, the Rabbit Man.
Oh yeah, you talked about him. Yeah, you talked about him on the podcast with Carolyn Finney.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So we've kind of strung him along a little bit. Charles Rodney is another beautiful individual, and again, if you line these things up, you have three people. Their backstory, how they came to be where they are, how I came to know them being as interesting as anything, but they all love hunting. And they couldn't come from any more disparate backgrounds. You have, in Charles Rodney, the son of a sharecropper in Louisiana, and Wyman Meinzer, the son of a rancher in North Texas, and then Dusan Smetana, who grew up in poverty in Czechoslovakia. But all of them have these weird stories that kind of coalesce around hunting, coalesce around the values of hunting and why we do what we do. And so as I went through this, I'm thinking, man, what a great way to kind of illustrate how our lives are affected by this pastime. So we'll start that with Charles Rodney. Charles Rodney is probably the most interesting person to listen to. I call it the Church of Rabbit Hunting. He preaches on rabbit hunting as if he's at the pulpit, and he basically is in this case. He was the son of a sharecropper in segregationist, if that's the right word to use, I'm sure it is, Louisiana. He grew up in relative poverty. And he talks about this in this interview. He talks about his life and what it meant, kind of what hunting was for the more prominent landowners, what hunting was for the poor sharecroppers that worked their place. And so that's a big part of what I appreciate about Charles, but also I appreciate his zest for life. And if you go in his house, he and his wife will like cooks me breakfast. It's like the best breakfast you'll ever have. It's all Louisiana home cooking. I met him over a rabbit hunt. He's got beagles, and I'll give you a little example, Phil, what it's like to hunt with Charles Rodney. He has these beagles running around. They're scent trailing rabbits, and to get them all together and get them working, he goes like, "Ay, ay, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Come on, get them!" And that's pretty much the whole. That's what you hear the entire time you hunt with Charles Rodney. It is fantastic. He's a fantastic human. I've had him on the podcast twice now. I hope to hunt with him this February for cottontails on the eastern shore of Maryland. So please enjoy this little clip from my conversation with Charles the Rabbit Man Rodney, the Church of Rabbit Hunting.
All right, we're recording. Charles, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine.
Well, thanks for having me to your home.
Well, you're quite welcome. My pleasure.
I want to start by saying, when did we rabbit hunt? It was a year and a half ago?
It was about 2 years ago, 2 seasons ago.
2 seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
On the eastern shore of Maryland. And I wish we could have done it last year. We were just talking about having children and how that, and being busy and how that does it. But when we hunted together on the eastern shore, it struck me that was a hunt I would do every year.
And I think you should. It was an awesome hunt.
Yeah, it was a great hunt. And it also struck me that the first thing we should talk about is how delicious rabbit meat cottontails are.
Rabbit meat is one of the best meat, and it's all natural. And there's hardly any fat. They eat only natural things, grass and leaves and twigs out in the woods. And they're running. And they'll eat soybean and stuff that they can get to. But they're running, so they're healthy. There are no fat on them, and it's one of the healthiest foods you can find.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that.
No, and a lot of people see them running around their backyard. They don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's
for
right.
me, so after that, we hunted in February. After that hunt we did, my dad was along. We went Super Bowl Sunday. We cooked up a bunch of rabbit legs. We soaked them in milk a little bit, fried them up, put a little Old Bay on them, served them at a Super Bowl party.
Great.
Everybody that was there eating them, like, these chicken legs are great. These are the best chicken legs I've ever had. So that's a rabbit.
Most city people don't know.
They were, where'd you get this chicken? Well, I got it on the eastern shore, and it's a damn rabbit.
That's right.
And so that always struck me as not only is rabbit hunting fun, we were talking about it earlier here, not only is it fun, is it easy to do, but you end up with, a bunch of rabbits to go home, skin, and eat.
That's right.
Fun for a kid to do.
And rabbits, not only are they good and good for you, but they're one of the easiest game to clean.
Yeah.
I can clean a bunch of rabbits by the time I clean 2 squirrels. and you just cut a little slit and you pull them opposite end and all the fur come off.
And you slit behind the tail? Or
I usually slit over the back or around the stomach and put my finger in and just pull outward.
Pants in the shirt method?
Yes, yeah. Right. And it comes off the back legs and over the head. Now, a lot of other guys do it a little bit different. And then I just take a knife and gut them. And
you're done.
I'm done. And if they're a little bloody, I soak them. I got a big one of them big wash tubs. Soak them for 8 to 10 hours overnight usually. And all that blood comes out. Yep. And then you clean it off. Wrap it in freezer paper. A lot of guys use shrink wrap and label them, and there you go. You're ready.
Yeah.
And so forth.
Does your wife cook up a lot of rabbits around here?
My wife actually is a city girl. I'm the country boy from Louisiana, and we've been married tomorrow. September the 22nd will be 46 years. Can't get her to even go out and look at the dogs when I get a new one. But she gives me support. So I do all the rabbit cooking. I do all the rabbit cleaning. I have a special freezer just for wild game because a lot of the people I take rabbit hunting give me other games, elk, moose, deer, whatever they hunt, wild waterfowl, and we eat some of it. But there are loads of people that I supply rabbit. Every year I have 20, 25 names to give rabbits. In my cut of the take, in my group, we'll get over 200. And in my take, I usually get about 40, 45. Mm-hmm. So some guys come just to shoot and hunt, shoot the breeze. Some guys take one or two. Some guys say, well, I don't want many. So whatever they don't take, I take because I have a market for giving them away.
Yeah.
I don't sell anything. I don't expect anything in return. All I expect is a thank you. And if I don't get that, or a big smile on your face, and that's thank you enough. Yeah. So there are lots of older people who lived in the country of Maryland, Southern Maryland, and some city folks, North Carolina, South Carolina. They did it. Their family hunted, and they can't get them anymore. And they say, hey, at church, I got a lot of people say, you take rabbits to church? I say, sure. I say, all these older people. I say, well, what mass are you going to tomorrow? We're Catholic. And I bring them a rabbit. It's clean, it's wrapped, it's labeled, and they enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's my treat to them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, and you get people, there's a lot of people, like you say, that can't go out and do that stuff.
That's right.
They don't have a place to go or time to go or
they're not
physically
able.
Unable to go.
Yeah.
You can share it with them. That's awesome. So you're from Louisiana. You found your way here to Maryland, and we'll get into that. But I want to just kind of go back to your upbringing and when you first started hunting, because I know we talked a little bit about swamp rabbits, which I thought was fun, a fun term. When did you first start hunting, and when did you first start rabbit hunting? What was the thing that got you excited about it?
Well, growing up, we were sharecroppers in Louisiana. So we lived on somebody else's land, and my dad and my uncle next door farmed. And when we would go hunting, you just walk behind the house into the fields and you would hunt there. I started about 8 years old, mainly following my big older brother, who was 11 years older than me. He loved to hunt, and they would let me follow him. But the rule was I'd walk right behind him. I didn't have a shotgun. I had a BB gun, and most time nothing. I carried whatever he killed. And I learned that way, and as time I got older and teenager, there was a friend who had a couple of dogs, and we hunted. We hunted in the cotton fields and on the ditches and in the woods, and we'd get cottontails in the field. And then if you wanted the big rabbits, you'd go in the woods, in the deep woods, and which was only probably a half a mile walk.
Yeah.
And we would get one or two. But we never had, being poor, we never had quality dogs, okay? We had yard dogs that could hunt rabbits too.
Yeah.
And do a lot of other things. These were multi-purpose dogs, so they would get some. And then I hunted throughout my teen years, and after college in Baton Rouge, I moved here in 72, got married, and started hunting a little bit here with my wife, two uncle, and we'd go down Southern Maryland. We had a couple little small spots. We'd get one or two rabbits. Then when the kids started coming, I quit. And then as they got older, and in college and in upper high school, I started back. So I told my wife, I said, I was relying on another fellow who wasn't too dependable and didn't have good dogs. I said, I like this so much, I'm going to start doing it. So I had an old truck that my family was our dad's, and when he passed, they gave it to me, and I brought it up from Louisiana, and we built a little common dog box. I got some dogs, made all of the mistakes, bought the wrong dogs.
Let's say, what dogs you buy first?
I bought a dog named Rowdy, and then I had one named Slim or something like that. Well, I didn't know much about dogs then, and the guy that sold them to me, he took me for a ride because I just wanted two dogs, and he sold me one dog that was slower and a fast dog. Now I know what I know now. That's a bad mixture. You want all of your dogs the same speed.
Yeah.
You want them all medium, all slow, or all fast. You want them when they're running to be in a bunch together on the scent line. You don't want one to be here and one 50 yards away.
Yeah.
So I made all of the mistakes, bought the wrong dog. dogs, and then I got some other dogs. Then I didn't know they ran deer, so I lost dogs. Dogs spent the night in the woods. So gradually, I started talking to some veteran hunters that I trusted, who raised dogs and bred dogs, and they gave me a lot of tips. And I started reading, and I started using better judgment of people that I bought dogs from, because I don't breed my own dogs. I buy them when they're started, 1 to 2 years. So they gave me loads of advice, which I'm proud to have received this advice from them.
Yep.
They told me all of the do's and don'ts, and I learned from my errors. And I learned how to break dogs using, it was Tritronics at the time, the training collars. Some people call them the shock collars now, Garmin. And I used those faithfully. And I put them on live deer and break them. Now I don't have to, because the deers have invaded the neighborhood where we live, so I can break them right here in the yard.
So you just got your dogs chasing deer in the yard?
In the yard, yeah. The deers come in the yard to eat all the flowers and things of that sort. So recently, last year, I built an 8-foot fence around my vegetable garden so we can have vegetables. It looks like a prison camp. All I need is a little tower on there. But
this is a multi-purpose dog use. Now you're training your dogs on deer, keeping them the hell out of your yard at the same time.
Well, the deer, now that the dogs are in the pen, the dogs, only 1 out of 6 will look at the deer and bark. The other 5 go about their business, and the deer know that they can't get out. So they go about their business. They just trot along. But I learned from these people. So all of this valuable knowledge, now I know how to select dogs, and have known for many years. So in the last 15 to 20 years maybe, I have not had one dog run off. Deers will get up in front of them, will cross the track, will be laying in the brush. They'll see the deer. They pay it no mind, because you know that deer scent is much hotter than a rabbit scent.
Sure.
So they don't pay it any mind, and we keep hunting. So when they go in the brush and they start barking, I don't have to panic that a big buck is going to run out the other side, and they're going to run, because if they chase deer, then they're no good to us as rabbit hunters.
Sure.
And a deer will run straight for miles. The dog will, if he survived the highways that they're going to cross, then he's no good for you, because you don't trust him. But now when I go with 6, I come back with 6. And guys will tell me, Charles, a deer just got up. What do you want to do? I say, don't do anything. They're not going to chase him. Just wait for that rabbit to come back.
Yeah.
And it happens over and over. But when you pick quality dogs from quality people, because a lot of guys dog trade. They'll tell you that this dog will do all sorts of things and so forth. And you've got a deer runner, you've got a dog that's gun shy and everything. So I buy quality dogs. I work them, and I buy my dogs only in the summertime so that I have time to train them.
Makes sense.
And let them get used to my voice, each other, and so forth, because the season starts always in Maryland the first Saturday in November. So I'll buy dogs in April, May, June, and work them and train them. And when the season comes, they're in shape. Yep. And so I don't have that problem. I have nothing but rabbit runners.
Only rabbit runners. And I've seen it in action. It is unbelievable.
That's
what
correct.
These dogs can do. So let's go back, because we'll talk dogs forever here. But when you were, you mentioned a few things. You came up poor.
Yes.
You came up seemingly close to your family, and you came up hunting.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like how that shaped you as a person? You know, how you became, you've been married for, we say 48 years.
46 tomorrow.
46 years. I want to get that number correct. Your wife cooks a hell of a breakfast. You probably eat, we just got finished that. I'm sure you've eaten many of those. But it seems like, kids, wife, you have a good life. Everything has turned out well, very happy and productive. And I always try to look back and how you were raised and what that might have given you. Do you have any insight as to your upbringing and what it meant?
Well, we were raised in a Christian family in South Louisiana. Most of the people are Catholic. There are other faiths there, and they're good people. they taught us the value of working together. We lived on a farm, so if we finished early, we helped the next guy and my uncle next door, and we helped people up and down the road, and they helped us. And Daddy grew a large vegetable garden. When I mean a large vegetable garden, he wasn't selling. He grew it, and we kept wondering, why are we growing all of this stuff? Well, back then, we didn't have freezers, so the old mason jars, we canned everything. And what we didn't use, we gave away. Mm-hmm. And I was the youngest of 7. So I got the luxury of picking when my older brothers and sisters started leaving and so forth. So we were raised up in 2 family, and a mother and a father. And we were raised up in Catholic school. We went to Catholic elementary and then on to public school. Mm-hmm. But we were raised with good Christian values that you help people and you do for people, and that's your thank you and that's your enjoyment. And that sticks with me today because I do some of the same thing, even though I hated it when we grew all those big gardens and somebody would come, and there were certain people who came by. They knew when the sweet corn made. They knew when the figs made.
Sure.
They knew when this made, and the pecans. We had pecan trees. And being the youngest, I got to go in that hot sun and go get these things and box these things. But I didn't know it in reality. I was enjoying it. I do the same thing today. Yeah. I grow a garden, and many of my hunting friends grow big gardens. There's a guy that grow greens, and he plants them for the deer so he can stick an arrow in them because he can't shoot a gun where he lives.
Yeah.
And so he plants the greens for the last 4 or 5 years. He doesn't sell them. He doesn't give them away. Guess what he does? He tells me, Charles, go in there and take them because you give them the people. And my cousin and I will go and we'll pick 2 pickup trucks load and we'll give to everybody and their brother. We'll take them to church, to his church, to my church, and the people. And we give. So we're giving back the way we were taught to give back. And he's an old country boy from Maryland too. So those family values stick today.
Yeah.
And where we live, everybody knew us. Okay. The races were separate, okay? Predominantly white and black. We were Creole. My folks spoke Creole. I know a little bit of it, but they have that intrinsic value that you help your fellow man regardless. And I do the same thing today.
Yeah.
I give service to the church. I give service to people. I have a lot of older friends in their upper 90s and close to 100.
Wow.
And one man is 93, and I take him rabbit hunting twice a year. The last 2 hunts, he rode on a little cart, and he just come to hear.
He's rabbit hunting on a cart?
Yeah, on a little John Deere 4-wheeler thing. And he rides along and he hunts, and we've become friends in 3 years. And at 93, he grows a big truck garden. So he sells everything 50 cents a pound. So I go sometime and I'll buy a truckload. You'd be surprised how much stuff you can buy for $50, and I give it away.
That's fantastic.
And so forth. So I even take some we have nuns, sisters at the convent. So I take stuff to them. They tell me they like deer. So I got some friends who gives me a couple of deers, and I give it away. And so I say, and they're from all over the world. They're about 12 of them there, but they're about 10 different ethnic groups, and they move them in and out. So they enjoy it. I give them all kinds of vegetables and so forth.
You're spreading the gospel of wild game.
Wild game and vegetable and service. People call me and so say, Charles, you have this. Can you tell me where? I say, I'll get you some. And I get in and they say, well, what can I do? Pay you? I said, there's no money. There's no money. You give back. When you give back, it comes back to you. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in detail, how the many people who have invited me to hunt on their land and what that has meant.
Yeah, we'll get to that too because I want to kind of go in order here.
Okay, go ahead.
But there is this amazing thing that you do. You said that a lot of people think you're an outfitter, right? Well, I remember when I met you and we hunted together, you gave me your business card, and it says to some effect like Charles the Rabbit Hunter Rodney.
Right, and it says the only game in town for me.
It's the only game in town for me.
Right, because I don't want to insult any of the other hunters, but this is all that I do.
That's all you do, and which is wonderful. And it doesn't say like call me for hunts. It doesn't say outfitter, guide. There's nothing of that. You literally, for no money, go hunting rabbits with anybody who desires to do so, and that you'll take the time to do it.
And I tell people this. My wife made the card up. She said, calls started coming in. She said, you need a card so these guys can call you. So it's got the cell and the house number and the email thing on there. And this was way before texting. So I passed them out to various people. And a lot of people say, are you an outfitter? Well, how do I get on your schedule? What do you charge? I say, hold up. Let me clear this up. I am not an outfitter. I'm just a guy that I'm passionate about rabbit hunting and having good dogs. And I enjoy people. And I meet people, easy people. We tend to take to each other. I can tell the ones that's laying a lot of BS out, okay? Mm-hmm. And I don't hunt with half crazy people. If they talk foolish, they won't get invited. And if they come and hunt one time and they do something wrong, that's not good hunting mannerism, then they're on their first and their last and they only hunt.
Yeah.
But I'm a good judge of people, and some of the people I've been hunting with for 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
And they bring many of their friends and family members and so forth. And most of them have some of the same hunting times. It's like in February when the waterfowl and deer seasons are over. The 4 Saturdays in February and President's Day, they belong to the same 4 people.
Yeah.
And nobody can break that lineup. They enjoy it so much they won't give it up.
That's what it's about. I mean, it's I think it goes back to, you're saying, having a garden, eating what you kill, having a community of people that share those same values. Enough to the fact they want to come and get your vegetables when they know they're ready to be plucked. That's just a life of giving, right? A life of sharing, a life of you become passionate about something. The first thing you think of is to share it with people.
Right. And we grew up that way. We shared with many people, and there were people just as poor as us, or poor. And the rich people, we knew who they were. They were the big landowners who own all the land. And, they didn't congregate around you because you were of that other class, whether you were black or white. Mm-hmm. But, that's how it was. And the value was instilled up in me to treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And it works well.
Yeah, seems to. So you met I want to hear about, just because your wife is lovely, and I just want to hear about, and it's your anniversary coming up, so I want to hear about how you guys met, because that's about the reason you came to Maryland, correct? Or
right.
One of the reasons.
Well, my brother he's a Catholic priest. He recently celebrated his 50th anniversary as a priest in May of this year. Mm-hmm. So he was the assistant pastor after he was ordained. He was ordained in 1968. So I came up in December of 1970 to visit with him. And he was assistant pastor of a church here in Washington, D.C., St. Luke's Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And my wife worked there as a student, typing and answering the phone on weekend. So I caught her eye, but she didn't want to have anything to do with me the first year. So I had my hair long at the time, and tell you the truth, I'd been out with some of the local boys, and we were drinking, we call it pluck, cheap wine and gin. And my eyes was a little red. And
I can't picture you with long hair, though. What kind of long?
Oh, I had a big, wild-looking afro back the time. Quite different.
And we're talking 70s. That's acceptable.
Yeah, we're talking
totally
70s.
Acceptable.
We're talking 70s.
That's totally acceptable.
And we were going through all of the cultural changes and the cultural shocks. So she didn't want to have anything to do with it. But I liked what I saw. And the next year I said, I'm going back. So I went back on Christmas break the next year. And I cut my hair, and I didn't drink anything. So my eyes
was this
clear.
All intentional? You thought, well,
it was all intentional by me. And she claimed she didn't have a boyfriend then that broke up, so she was looking. And so we got to talking and visiting, and we corresponding and visiting. And after college, I came back in that next summer, and we got married in September.
Wow.
So that's the short end of the love story. And so what did I move here? Because there were jobs here. Mm-hmm. In Baton Rouge, most of the jobs were kind of menial, working in the chemical plants. And I never wanted to work in the chemical plants. I knew many people who did that work. I said, I can do better. So I came here and I got a job in the federal government down at the Naval Ordnance Station in Indian Head, Maryland. Worked there a few years and then worked some other federal agencies. And she was working for the Navy Department. And we progressed along the promotion chain and did well. We both ended up in human resources. So that's one of my other qualities. I know people from a human resource standpoint.
Sure.
We hired, promoted, classified, did pay changes. I worked 6 years in equal employment opportunity where I dealt with all the people's problems, the discrimination and all of the things associated with that, not being treated fairly, perception or otherwise. So I got to know people well in handling problems, hiring, firing, all of that, counseling. So I got to know people quite well, people in a part of people. And it all stems back to my upbringing. So, and then we progress on. We both did about 30 plus years in the federal government. We've been retired for a few years. I've been retired for 15 years and she 12 years. And we raised our 3 children in this house. Matter of fact, the last one, who's 37, she was 3 days old when we moved into this house.
Wow.
And they're all gone. So, we're comfortable and we give thanks to God all the time for all of our blessing. We have 3 beautiful kids. They each have 2 children and they all went to Catholic elementary, Catholic high school, and college. And 2 of them have advanced degrees. So, and they're doing quite well with their families. So, as they say, the apple don't fall far from the tree. So
right.
they have good quality and good skills too.
Good.
So,
wow. I mean, what strikes me in that whole thing is, you grew up in segregated Louisiana in the 60s and 70s. And then you move here and you're working in human resources and discrimination. What was that like going from, where you grew up? I mean, as you said, that's how you grew up. It's how it was. At the time, you didn't think much of it. But then you get to a different part of the world and you start to deal with those problems in a more modern sense.
Well, it's a survival thing. The culture dictated how you behave and how you acted, where you associated. I remember not being able to go into many places because the signs were up.
Yeah.
And if the signs were not there, there are certain places you knew not to go into, and we were taught not to go into, and certain people we couldn't associate with because of how things were. But then here, I come into a world where I have to deal with some of those same problems as a young adult in hiring people and treating them fair of any color, any belief they have, and treat them and then later on when I was the equal employment manager at this one agency, ensuring that everybody got fair treatment and going out and defending people who I thought were wrong. And I did that. It probably cost me a few things because I think I fought some battles that some people thought I shouldn't have fought.
Yeah.
But I saw wrong and I tried to deliver it and make it right. Yep. And so forth. And I had some hard cases where some people were mislabeled for no reason other than somebody down the line with a little bit more power or oomph thought they should be treated differently. And that treatment I thought was unfair. Yeah. And I spoke out about it.
Yeah.
And most of those people were not my color. And I treated everybody as fair as I can be, regardless of who walked in that door. If they came with a problem, I shut the door and I listened and I took notes, and we had certain steps you have to go into the equal employment channel. You have to do certain thing in a step-by-step in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to be neutral. And I try to maintain that neutrality. And when some of them I thought was wrong, I told them, you're not right with this. And when the managers were wrong or right, I told them too. And I shared with them. So I didn't choose one side or the other. But somewhere in there, unknowns to me, I must have helped some of the wrong people or took on some of the issues that the management didn't care about. But they never came back and told me. So, but I did what my heart felt. And I think today, when I look at people, I don't look at anybody's color. I don't look at anybody's religion, whether they believe or don't believe. And we surely don't talk about politics.
Yeah.
When we go in the field, and a lot of the times when I take various groups hunting, I always try and take one of my buddies. Because sometimes we have some new guys that don't understand all of the features of rabbit hunting. So while I'm working the dog, my buddy will help keep them in line. And the main thing with the guys is two of them will get together and start talking. And the one thing I find that's a big nuisance now, they need to leave those cell phones in the truck. If you got to talk on the phone, then you need to stay at home.
That's right.
So I bring one of my buddies, and most of the people I take hunting, they're not of my color, my race, but that doesn't matter. I tell everybody we're rabbit hunters.
Yep.
We're rabbit hunters. That's what we're doing. We're not trying to cure the world of the social ills and all the other things and what you believe and what you don't believe. We're rabbit hunting. Long as you're safe and you're having fun. And I tell them my job simply is with the dogs to get some rabbits up. Hopefully you make a shot or two. Now, if you kill, that's on you. If you can't shoot and you keep missing, then there's a lot of teasing.
Listen,
but that's my job.
The Church of Rabbit Hunting is open to all as long as
that's
you
right.
shoot.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
All right, that's it. That's all. Episode 93 in the books. Volume 1 of the best of. I would posthumously thank Charles, Wyman, and Dusan for being part not only of my life, but this show, and hopefully a good part of your life. You can learn a lot from where they came from, how they got to be where they are today. So many lessons packed in this show, so many lessons packed in those podcasts for you to listen to. And that's why I wanted to lead off. We have 3 more volumes. You think it's right to call them volumes, Phil?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that feels
good.
Feels meaty. Mm-hmm. Feels like they got a lot going. This is the first volume. We're going to have 3 more. And we'll probably do more of this because I really enjoyed putting them together. I hope you enjoy listening to them. But as we get into the Christmas season, man, it's to me, Christmas, Thanksgiving, this holiday season is about people. It's not about gifts or money or anything like that. It's about people and the people that I value and the people I want to spend time with. And so I don't care about gifts very much. I like to get like whiskey or maybe like a cupcake. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not out there valuing that part of the season. I choose who I want to be around, who I want to spend my off time with, and that's what I feel is important, and I want to give all I can to those folks when I'm with them. And so hopefully listening to these 3 gentlemen will help you appreciate the special people in your life, the people that have inspired you, the people that have helped your story along. And that's what these guys have done for me. What do you think, Phil? You have any reflections on the holiday season?
Not so much. No, I know, I think we talked about this on the last podcast, but I know that you are not a huge fan of the holiday season.
Yeah.
But I don't know that every time it rolls around, something stirs.
That's true.
Stirs inside of me. That
deep in my loins.
I don't know. I enjoy it. I like the music. I like the food. I like the lights. I like the tacky decorations.
Yeah. I can't say I hate any of those things. Like the modern idea of Christmas, I think is a little diluted. But like I said, I any chance I get to be around the people I love is a good time for me. I would say, without being ashamed at all, that these 3 men on this podcast, I love them all, man. They were they're awesome. And so hope you loved them too. And next week, we're going to get a little shifty on you. We're going to talk, we're going to have Steve Ranella talk about Game of Thrones. We're going to have me and Berkeley, a bunch of other stuff. So stick around for volume 2 of the best of THC. Happy holidays.
Stay here too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven. Sitting as the bar stool starts to grow roots. I'm feeling like an old worn-out pair of shoes. Oh, tell me what is it that I should do?
After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.